Okay, quick video on how to strip the air dryer, the old style air dryer on the LMTV. First off, you want to make sure your wet tank is empty. So wet tank's empty. Second, you want to make sure you lift this safety relief valve here and just vent any air that might be held in this canister. On the bottom, you'll then find 6 bolts, or 6 nuts rather, on studs that will allow you to remove the bottom cap. See all that yellow nasty gunk? That is emulsified oil, or oil mixed with water, that is collected in the bottom since the last time this thing was serviced. Anyway, you remove those 6 nuts and this thing will just pull off. There's an O-ring seal on it that gives it a little bit of tension, so you may have to tap on it a little bit, but it should come off. Once you get it off, look up inside and you will find this canister. This aluminum canister here that I'm holding. See, more yellow nasty stuff. It's actually an aluminum cylinder. Inside of it is located your desiccant canister. On the bottom end, there will be a filter assembly, which I've already removed. It's right here. This filter assembly and a little spacer, and you remove this bolt and this assembly will come right off. Then you can screw the bolt back in and you can use it as something to pull. I just grabbed it with a pair of ice grips because this thing is basically wedged up inside of the tube. It's being held by O-ring seals up in the top, and I'm not going to be able to see a picture, it's not light enough. But anyway, that's held, this aluminum tube is slid over an O-ring seal on the top end. But if you give this steady pressure, it'll pull. This whole assembly will just pull right out of the bottom. Okay, then you can remove this little spacer piece. Get this out of my hand. Then you can remove this little spacer piece here. It's just sitting in there. And there's your desiccant bag. So I'm actually going to strip this desiccant bag apart, take a peek at it inside, and see what type of desiccant it is, and whether I can clean it or not, which may or may not be possible. I was mainly looking just to clean up any crudlies I found like this stuff here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that too before I reassemble it. But anyway, it's not rocket science. Oh, you want to put a mark on the assembly too. You see a little blue mark I put on there, and then I put a blue mark on the housing as well, just to make sure I line them up in the right spot when I put it back. Anyway, that's about all there is to it. I'm going to go clean this one up and see what that desiccant looks like. Okay, here's the desiccant bag cartridge. There's part number 22888. Just a bag full of coalescing media. This one is held with a zip tie. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Okay, so I'll cut the zip tie. And we'll do a little reveal. Okay. That's the media. It's basically just little plastic beads. I don't think these are absorbing. It would not serve its purpose properly if this absorbed anything. So all this is designed to do is, as the vapor is forced through it, the water vapor in the air, it hits the little balls, and where the balls are touching each other, and it coalesces the water vapor back into droplets. As the droplets work their way down through the cartridge, because this is at the top end, this is the bottom end down here, as it works its way down through the cartridge, the droplets get larger and larger. Unfortunately, we're not just pumping water vapor through this. The compressor rings will leak past a little bit. You will unfortunately find some dirt will find its way into the system, even though it's receiving filtered air. It will get a little bit of dirt in there as well. But you get oil from the compressor, especially as the compressor gets more and more worn. It will pass more oil past its rings. So you get oil buildup on this, and that kind of starts to impede its action. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump all these out completely into a pan with hot soapy water, and I'm going to try and work any material loose off of it, and then I'm going to dry them, and then I'm going to put them back in their container. Okay, here are the beads soaking in a bucket with a warm soap and water solution. I just agitate them every now and then to get the any surface material off of them. Okay. Make sure I don't have any on my fingers. The only place I really saw any sign of oil on the bag was at the very bottom. So I've got some degreaser on that as well, and we'll go wash that out. While these are soaking, I went out and wiped out the inside of the housing on the truck, and sprayed some degreaser up in there, some soap and water, and I will flush that out with a hose, and then I'll be ready to rinse these off and then dry them out, pack them back in the bag, and reassemble. Okay, this is the same bucket I washed them in. You see now they're all loose. I just used a hairdryer. Once I poured the water out through a paper towel to get most of the water out, then I just used a blow dryer on high. You just keep agitating, mixing them around, and they go from the dark wet brown to this lighter tan color that they are now. And now they're ready to go back in the filter housing. Some people have talked about having problems putting the filter pack into the cartridge when it's full. I think probably the easiest way is, especially since I have it empty already, is to just fill it in place. So I put a little bit in the bottom to weight it down in the bottom of the container, which has now been cleaned. And I will go ahead and fill it in place and then re-zip tie the bag. And then I can put the top diffuser back on. Then it'll be ready to go back into the truck. Okay, there it is all reassembled with the desiccant back in the canister, the diffuser in place. And I've got the filter has been reinstalled on the bottom. The filter was perfectly clean. I didn't see anything in it. Could see light through it. So that's about it. It's ready to go back in the truck. The other thing I think I'll do is I'll clean out the purge valve just to make sure there's no crud in it so it continues to operate smoothly. And that's it for this service. Okay, it is air dryer reinstallation time. Okay, so we've got the filter canister all cleaned up, ready to go. The only hard part about this is that up inside of this housing there is a really big spring that compresses down and sits down on top of this core diffuser here at the top. And it wants to push this whole cartridge back out the bottom once we insert it. So there, I'm starting to hit the spring. So wiggle it around, make sure everything's centered. When you push it up, you'll feel it go up and slide up over the O-ring. What I found was the easiest way to do is I just take a screwdriver and I push it up in here against the bottom casing, and I use that to hold it in place. It's quite a large spring. I use it to hold the spring compressed while I get the housing lined up, and then I just slowly roll the screwdriver out of it. Once I get the bottom housing up, I can wiggle it a little bit and start to work the housing up until I have threads on the studs. I can spin some hardware on. Because it has that spring, when you take the bottom off of this thing, it could be that the filter wants to just spit itself right out the bottom. Mine didn't do that. When I took it apart, I had to actually remove the nut off the bottom of the filter and pull the whole thing out, which I think I showed earlier in the video. Let me just put the hardware on and torque it down in place, and then I'll check it. It was cold out here. It frosted last night, froze last night, and I went out and I measured this housing with the infrared to see what the temperature was, and it was up to 40 degrees by the time I tried this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to move around the housing and just walk the housing, or walk the base cap up into the housing. I turned on the main switch and then waited a few minutes and came back with an infrared thermometer, and it had the heater unit had moved the case temperature from 40 degrees up to about 55 degrees out here at the edge. It's not a very big heater, but it does work, and it is enough to keep this bowl and the purge valve, more importantly, from freezing when you're operating below zero. That's about it. It just pushes up in there. Since it uses an O-ring, it has a rather generous mechanical gap to allow the O-ring to slide up into it. So it actually goes back together fairly easily. Just that spring's a little bit of a pain in the butt to hold the cartridge up against while you get the base plate in place. Anyway, that's about it. I'm going to plug this thing in and op check it, and this job's done. So, have a good day. Oh, the manual says 12,000 miles or 12 months, whichever comes first.